Welcome. I'm Julie Bacon, and you're listening to the Mindset Coaching for Handlers podcast, a podcast for dog handlers who are on a mission to achieve big goals. Here I share lessons, insights, personal stories, and tools you can apply during your next show, trial, or test to help you strengthen your mental game and hopefully cue more consistently. Be sure to check out the show notes where you'll find details about the episodes, plus important links, including the link to the Dogged Planner and Workbook created just for handlers on a mission. So if you're ready to improve your competitive mindset, get out of your own way, and connect with your dog like never before, then it's time to get comfy, bring an open mind, and work your mindset. Hey there, welcome back to the podcast. All right, before we get started, I just have to remind everybody that we now have a sponsor, St. Rocco. Yes, the same St. Rocco of the fabulous jerky-like treats and meal toppers and entrees. Small business. We like to support a small business, so make sure you listen to the ad and make sure you check the show notes for a discount code and the URL, okay? All right, so let's get into it. This week, we are talking about the fact that sometimes we put our goals on a pedestal. And it's kind of a weird concept, I guess, but what it basically means is we put our goals as being so important and so high and critical to our self-value and our self-worth that we almost think that our goals are better than us in this weird way, and therefore we are not worthy of our goals. And while that maybe sounds like an existential crisis, what happens is we do all kinds of then funky things in our mental mindset, but also in our behaviors when we think our goals are kind of the end all be all. And of course, I'm talking about outcome goals, because process goals don't give us the heebie-jeebies. Process goals are the things that we control and the things that we do in order to put ourselves in a position to cue or get a title or, finish a big title. And what we're talking about instead is when we put the goals on this pedestal and think that they are so much better than we are, or that getting that goal will change our lives or will mean something else, will mean something special. And this happens kind of more than we think. We can do that just as easily with a novice title as we can with a mock or a rock or an och or any of the other fabulous titles, right? And we attach all of this meaning to it. Well, when we do that, when we attach a story or we attach this extra meaning or we put it up on this pedestal saying that to ourselves that when I get that, that will mean I've made it, or that will mean I'm a great handler, or that will mean that my dog is amazing, or that will mean that everybody else will know how amazing my dog is in addition to me, or I will get respect, or, I just will get all of these other things. We do many things, actually, and one of them is we delay our joy. When we say those things, typically, it's I'll be happy when. Now, we may not say that. We may not voice, I'll be happy when I get this title, but there is this underlying current of your life will have meaning, or you will feel better about yourself as a handler, or you feel like other people will see you as better or special or different when this thing happens, instead of doing that in the now. So it can be, we make them kind of the end all be all of our journey instead of actually enjoying the journey. And yeah, I know, roll your eyes, that sounds like fluff, or it sounds like, yeah, I know I'm supposed to enjoy the journey, but I really want this title. I get it. We all want things. That's why we're listening to this podcast. That's why we care about our mindset. You think I don't have a long list of things that I want for myself and my dogs? Craziness. Of course I do. I had to write a whole book about it. Okay. But when we elevate our goals to an almost mythical status, we can inadvertently set ourselves up for stress, disappointment, and burnout, because we are waiting for this thing to fulfill us. We are waiting for this achievement so that we get this meaning, right? We fill in the blanks, whatever it is, whatever that story it is that you're telling yourself. And it really doesn't have to be some big title. It really can be finishing a novice title on a baby dog. Maybe you feel like you need that in order to compare yourself to others or compare yourself to the other litter mates, et cetera, et cetera. So one of the biggest dangers of putting our goals on a pedestal is this trap of perfectionism. Okay. So sometimes when we see our goals as something like almost unattainable or magical, then we start to believe that, well, only perfectionism will get us there, right? I have to be perfect so that I will achieve it. And we've talked about perfectionism before, but just to remind, perfectionism can be paralyzing. And part of the reason is it's not possible. Think about all the runs you've had with all the dogs in your life. How many of those runs were truly perfect? You would make no improvement on them. I mean, tiny, right? Tiny. And sometimes the feeling was great, or, the moment was great, or there was a lot of things that made it moment, but truly a perfect run? I mean, they're really, I don't know. They are mythical. I mean, mythical is the right word. But we start putting pressure on ourselves because we think if this goal is this extraordinary, then I too must be extraordinary in order to get it. And it's really hard to be extraordinary consistently, right? If we're going even for a novice title, we have to be extraordinary 3 times. And we have to be extraordinary with a baby dog, right? Who doesn't really know what extraordinary is, okay? So when we do that, we can find ourselves obsessing about every little thing, every little mistake. Or we come down really hard on ourselves, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. And then we get frustrated, or then we think that any imperfection is going to derail us. And what happens is, of course, whenever we're dealing with a perfection problem, a perfection habit, a perfection mindset, then we sometimes get paralyzed, or we're afraid to do anything, or we are just so hard on ourselves and therefore hard on our dogs that we spin in this land of yuck. My technical term, okay? We get ourselves stuck in that zone of that nothing else will do. Nothing else but perfection will do. And that's not fair to ourselves. It's not fair to our dogs. And it ends up getting us really frustrated really fast. And of course, continued frustration will lead us to that burnout moment. Okay. If we remember from, I don't know, a while ago, that third sort of rule / thing that I heard from an Olympic coach, which was, when you're training, when you are working toward a big goal, a third of your training should be fantastic. It should feel great. It should feel easy. It should feel amazing. It should feel like progress. A third of your training, your work should be meh, feels nothing, neutral. You don't have any big feelings about it one way or the other. And a third of it should suck, okay? Quite frankly, because it should be hard and it should be frustrating and it should be you leveling up and really working on it. But it should be a third, or it should average out to be that. If you are spending too much time in that frustration zone, right? If you are 90% of your time is frustration instead of only 33% of your time, then you are going to feel like burnout. You are going to feel like quitting. So we have to find that balance. And let me tell you, perfectionism is not going to get us there faster. So when we are going for a goal, when we put it on a pedestal, we run the risk of needing to be, a superhero, right? Extraordinary in order to achieve that goal. And that's just not healthy. And most of the times, quite honestly, it's not true. I've had a lot of novice runs in my life that were a lot less than perfect, or maybe even just by the skin of my teeth, just the minimum points or minimum performance that I needed in order to get that result. Okay. All right. The second thing that can happen when we put our goals up on a pedestal is we do lose sight of the journey. Again, this maybe sounds cliche, maybe sounds corny, but remember, we did not get into this for the 75-cent ribbons, okay? We got into this because of the relationship with our dogs, or we like enjoy the challenge. We like to compete with our dogs. We like to see how far we can go, or we just love training animals and seeing like what we can do together. In other words, a lot of other reasons other than shiny titles. Like, I didn't get into this knowing that like, oh my God, you mean the AKC sends me a piece of parchment? This is fantastic. Yes, please sign me up. Like, that wasn't my underlying motivation, okay? So when our goals are placed too high on this pedestal, it is easy to lose sight of the journey. It is easy to lose sight of the fact that we are running with our best friend, right? And when this happens, our focus shifts entirely to that end result, aka outcomes, aka away from those process goals. And also remember, one of the things about process goals is when we focus on our process goals, we can see progress. Right? I can walk into the ring, I can be focused on my connection or cueing my dog earlier or, any number of things. I can still have an absolute train wreck of a run, but have accomplished those things and be able to see progress. Right? Novice baby dogs are great examples of that. We walk into the ring, maybe the wheels come flying off halfway through, but we walk out and we're able to say like, oh my God, that was so much better. Did you see that connection? Or did you see like how they did this or how they did that? And in those process goals are our progress. Right? We can see our progress. We can start to measure our progress. And so when we do that, when we focus on our process goals, we are more likely to focus on the journey. We are more likely to see the progress that we are making. We can see the milestones. We can see it unfolding before us. And our whole lives aren't dependent on that outcome, right? That result. And again, sometimes that result is far away. Like in the case of mocks, rocks, pox, arches, drafts, grandmasters, all of those things are marathons. They take time and they take a number of cues and points and things like that. So they're not instant. So if we spent that whole time to get to that, only focus on the outcome, think about how much we're missing. Okay. Remember, in that journey is where we build our resilience. We build our confidence. We build our dog's confidence, our dog's resilience. We build our relationships. And we build that trust that we need to. So when we focus on the process goals, not only are we, getting those milestones, are we getting skills and things like that, but we are getting a lot of like kind of, I'll say soft skills or soft results, like the relationship, like the, just what it's like to just go in the ring together. I've often referred to it, I guess because it's a horse term, like just miles, right? Just getting miles. There's sometimes that a dog just need to walk into every ring that opens for a while just to get the experience of doing so and start to understand each other. When we put those goals on a pedestal, we forget that those things matter. That those things are meaningful, that they have value, and that there is value in the process and in the progress that is not measured by those fancy 75-cent green ribbons. Okay? And then another thing that can happen is we get kind of an unhealthy attachment to the outcomes. Okay? When we see the goals or the outcome goals or the titles or whatever as the ultimate achievement, sometimes if we don't reach that, then it feels catastrophic, right? Because then it feels like nothing else will do. If you are only measuring your progress or your personal value as a handler or your dog's value in comparison to other dogs or litter mates or something else or training partners, then if they don't get those goals, then everything's catastrophic because you have no way else to measure them. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about like the way I do goal setting, which was not my invention, by the way. Like Lanny Basham, there's a lot of other people out there that do this kind of outcome versus process goals. I did not invent it, okay? I just preach it because I love it. But that's why I am so passionate about it, because in the process goals, it, again, like I said, is our milestones, our achievements, our progress. So if we only are measuring by the outcome, then that means we are devaluing everything that's in between. Think of a baby dog, 6-month-old dog, and someday you're going to get a mock. If a mock is your only goal, then what you're telling me is everything that happens between baby dog status at 6 months old and that mock is meaningless. Well, that's ridiculous, obviously, right? That negates all of the relationship. That negates all of the progress, all of the skills that happened, whether they're soft skills like resilience or they're hard skills like specific handling maneuvers. And of course you wouldn't do that, okay? But sometimes when we are putting those goals on a pedestal and we are putting them as like the end all be all, then we are negating some of the progress that is happening along the way. So we don't want to have that all or nothing thinking, because first of all, it leads to an absolute roller coaster of emotions, because you're either on the top of the world or you're in total despair mode, right? And you start to tie your value to it, your like personal value in the world to it, and you start to evaluate your dog by the number of titles in front or behind their names, okay? So it is crucial that we recognize the success isn't just about reaching the goal, it's also about how we grow along the way. All right, I have to stop talking for 1 second and I'll be right back. Hey everyone, I am so excited to share that we have our first sponsor on the podcast, St. Rocco. You might already know them for their amazing all-natural jerky-style treats, but did you know they also make entrees and food toppers with the same top-notch ingredients? It's true. I've got to be honest, I'm a huge fan of these treats. I use them all the time, whether I'm training, at trials, or even when it's just nail trimming time. My dogs love them, and it feels good to support a small business that genuinely cares about our dogs. And there's something special just for you. St. Rocco is giving Q listeners 20% off. Just use the code JB20 at checkout when you order from saintroccos.treats.shop. That's SAINTROCCOS treats.shop, code JB20. I will also put a link in the show notes. Okay, so when we want to do better, right? If we want to fix this, the first thing to do is obviously awareness. We always start with awareness, right? Are there any goals that you are putting on a pedestal that are so important that if you don't get them, you're a failure? And does that sound dramatic? Yes, that's what putting goals on a pedestal does. It's very dramatic, okay? It has a dramatic flair about it. And it could be a title. It could also be a skill, right? I definitely would say that there was a time I was putting Moxie's weaves on a pedestal, for instance, okay? So it definitely could be something that's like a skill that sort of turns into this like end all be all because you just can't get it and your life will be over if you can't get it, anything like that. So really have a think. Think really hard about what are you putting on a pedestal? Is it a goal? Is it just a certain kind of expectation that you and your dog will even have a certain type of relationship, right? Like maybe you're expecting this new puppy to be just like the last 3 puppies, for instance, and you expect them to have the same kind of relationship. Or, not to chew the couch like the last 3 did, right? It could be anything. But you'll know it if it feels like do or die, right? You'll know it if it feels like if I don't accomplish this, then I am not good enough, or my dog isn't good enough, or some other catastrophic thinking. Basically, look for those kind of if-then statements in your goal setting. Like, if I get this, then I'm amazing, or if I don't get this, then I am not amazing. All right. You'll know you're sort of onto a pedestal goal. Like if you have that kind of thinking, sort of in the mix somewhere. Okay. So look for that. And to avoid this, you've got to keep your goals in perspective, right? You've got to balance those outcome goals, which we all need to have. I am a fan of outcome goals. I'm not telling you not to have outcome goals. I have outcome goals. I have lists of outcome goals. I have lists for each dog. I have lists for myself. I have lists of outcome goals. But we can't idolize those goals, right? We can't make them the end all be all. They're milestones. They're part of the journeys. There's things we want. There's things we're working toward, but we have to recognize that the process is going to give us a lot more joy and a lot more measurements of success, right? Those little milestones, signposts, whatever you want to call it along the way. Those things, those moments of joy, those really special runs are going to come out of your process goals. Okay, so we have to go back to celebrating those small victories, learning from our setbacks, embracing the process. Okay, some of that, yes, I get it. It sounds cliche, but it became a cliche because it's true. And a lot of people said it over and over again because it matters. So we need a balanced perspective, right? We can enjoy the pursuit of our goals without losing ourselves, without chasing, without putting blinders on and only seeing that outcome goal, and instead seeing everything else that's going into it. Okay. It's a balance. We set that goal, that outcome goal out there, but we get there in the journey, in the process, in the grinding it out, maybe in the hard work, in the little moments. That's where the joy is. That's the journey, right? And that's where we're going to actually tell the stories, right? The stories of our dogs are going to be told in all these little moments, not in just the story of titles. Okay? So that's your food for thought this week, okay? I want you to really think about what goals are you currently, or have you in the past kind of put on a pedestal and were sort of the end all be all? And another way to look and to see if you have any of these goals is look back and see if you have any goals that you have a lot of grief around not achieving, right? And I don't mean you ran out of time with the dog. That is a whole special kind of grief. But I'll say, for me, I have grief around, Moxie not getting a mock, because of her weaves and all of that and all the time. And, there was COVID was in there and all this. I mean, it just timing was bad. And, and so when I look at that and I think ooh, is that something I put on a pedestal for her? Or did I just have this expectation because of her talent and because of, how fast she sort of progressed? Was I just sort of expecting that? So sometimes our grief in not getting a title or not achieving something tells a story that maybe we put that on a pedestal. Maybe that goal was so important, or we made it so important, I should say. We elevated it to a status that it really became a pedestal goal. And sometimes grieving something that you can no longer have kind of points back to that, can be like a symptom, if you will. Regardless, look at it. Look and see what goals are you putting on a pedestal? How can you rebalance? And how can you, bring those process goals back up to the forefront? So that's really what you're thinking most about, and you are enjoying the journey along the way. And speaking of journeys, I hope no matter what you're up to this week with your dogs, I hope you have a fantastic time. Thanks so much for listening to the Mindset Coaching for Handlers podcast with me, Julie Bacon. I am so grateful for your precious time. Check out my Dogged Planner workbook and journal available on Amazon. Just search for Dogged Planner. I also offer monthly membership that's perfect for ongoing support of your awesome goals. Check out theqcoach.com for details, or just stop by and check out all the ways you can work on your mindset. And be sure to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at theqcoach and let me know how it's going. Finally, please share, subscribe, and leave a review. This helps us podcasters tremendously. Plus, I know I get my best podcast recommendations from friends. Thanks, and have a great week with your dogs.